Hello and welcome back to another episode of the InnerFight podcast. I hope you've had an awesome week. This week, my guest is Rob Foster. Despite what I said at the start of the show, he was actually on the show in November when we were in A10 talking all about running. In this week's show, he talks a little bit about running, but generally the gist, as you've probably seen from the title, is all about coaching. What makes good coaches? What makes bad coaches? And also, how can you be better if you are being coached at being what we call coachable? Rob has an insane amount of experience from early childhood days that he talks us through when he was running in the northeast of England, and he remembers that coach straight off the bat. No ums, no ahs. He was straight into it. And he also has an incredibly unique, powerful, and successful way that he is coaching people today. We're not too sure where coaching and ChatGPT is going to get to, but we're pretty sure that if we did get him on the show in 5 years, A, there'd still be a show, which means B, both of us would probably still be coaches. This week's announcements, you may be listening to this show just a few hours before the coaches kick off their Into the Darkness journey. Into the Darkness was born in 2018. Well, 2017, but it was kind of a different one. 50-kilometer ride, 50-kilometer run, 50-kilometer ride out in the beautiful, some people say my second home, of Al Qudra. They are at it tonight, Friday night, for all of our clients, friends, people that want to get involved. It takes place the following Friday, which, for those of you that know, or maybe you're listening to it on a Monday, maybe you're listening to the show on a Monday, maybe not. Friday the 26th is this year's Into the Darkness. If you want to get involved, let us know. I mentioned it last week, and I also mentioned last week, Final Fridays runs on the same day at an earlier time. That will kick off at, to be confirmed, 5:30 p.m. here in the gym. If you want to work out with your friends, family, whoever you normally work out with or whoever you want to work out with, come and get involved in Final Fridays and then go out to Al Qudra and, as someone said in one of our meetings today, cook the guys a barbecue. They'd really appreciate it. Another announcement, if you want to travel with us, with Rob Jones, who some of you might know, and myself, please do come to Chamonix. We'll be in Chamonix, France, the Alps, snow, sometimes trees. Always trees, sometimes snow. Always snow on Mont Blanc, actually, all through summer. Very beautiful. We'll be there from the 26th to the 30th of June. We'll be organizing runs every day, walks, coffees, good times. It is so much fun. If the people that came last year, ask them. If not, just ask me. If not, I've just told you. It's really good fun. Come to Chamonix. It's during Eid in Dubai, so no one in Dubai is working anyway. You might as well come. And if you're around the world and you want to come and join us for a couple of runs in Chamonix, Rob Jones and I organize a trip that sometimes we get lost on. Not often, though. We always have plenty long blacks. Rob Jones often takes his coffee-making paraphernalia to some very beautiful spots near Mont Blanc. It's awesome. Didn't rain once last year. Hopefully it won't this year as well. And finally, an announcement which is more relevant for the people that come to the gym, but it's also relevant for people that don't come to the gym because this show is listened around the world, so I don't want to exclude you. Body analysis machine. We have a in-body body analysis, body composition analysis machine here at the gym, which is an insanely, I would say, underutilized tool of great value. Lots of people still these days, I won't be mean about them, they still use a bathroom scales. Bathroom scales is really not giving you an accurate reading of what's going on in your body. As some of you may know, if you drink a little bit of water, the measurement on the scales might go up, and if you have poo, it might go down again. However, body analysis machine, which is downstairs in the gym, it is free to use for all of our members. And if you're not a member, but you're a friend of the show and you live in Dubai and you want to use it, give me a shout. You're more than welcome to use it. It tells you absolutely everything that's going on in your body. And what the difference is that we're not looking at an overall figure and getting stressed out about it. We're able to get the number of kilos of muscle in your body, as well as the number of kilos of fat and water and loads of other stuff. If you're not using a body analysis machine, it's something that I highly recommend. You don't need to get stressed out about it. It's not on your wrist like a stupid Whoop, but it is a useful tool to use to track where you're at. Random fact, Andy, one of the coaches here, uses it every day at the moment just to make sure that it works. What a guy. That is all the announcements for this week. This is episode number 806 of the InnerFight podcast, Coaching with Rob Foster. Enjoy the show. Rob Foster, welcome to the show. Back to the show. It's first time one-on-one.
I think so, eh? This is it.
Why has it taken 3.5 years to get you one-on-one on this, behind these mics?
I've been trying to avoid it and miss calendar invites for a long time now.
Mate, today we are all about coaching.
Correct.
Define it.
Coaching.
Straight out the blocks.
Absolute stitch up. Is the guidance of one professional to another person to help them through whatever challenge they have set themselves.
Your definition, or is that a Google one?
That's Rob Foster special off the top of my head.
Really?
It's definitely got some potholes.
A process that aims to improve performance and focuses on the here and now rather than on the distant past or future.
Is that Google?
Yeah. Yeah. Woo. Or an experienced person called a coach supports a client in achieving a specific personal or professional goal by providing training and guidance.
That was closer.
That was literally what you said.
Yeah.
That was Google.
Not ChatGPT.
No.
Yeah,
Have you used ChatGPT?
No, actually.
Why?
Well, Ash has. My wife. My
Are
lovely
you
wife.
worried?
I'm not worried. I think it's a great training tool. I think of it as a stimulus for ideas.
So why haven't you used it?
I haven't really had a time nor want to try it.
Yeah. I'm asking for my own personal information. I haven't used it either.
Ash has it. She likes to play around with it. It's good for ideas.
Are you scared to use things like that?
No, it's a tool.
Yeah.
It won't be in the future, but for the minute, it's a tool to help creativity.
Or to remove creativity.
It depends how you use it. So if you get something that is giving you ideas, so you have an idea, you don't know how to express it, you say, I want to say something about something.
Yeah.
It comes up with a very generic rubbish response, and then you go, okay, that's good, but how can I make it better? If you're not lazy.
We should together break our ChatGPT virginity after the show, mate.
Do it YouTube.
Type in coaching.
There's quite a few interesting coaching plans that are being brought up.
That's for sure. We'll come back to the definition, mate. I want to cast it back, though, because I think this is where, definitely for me, and maybe you've got some thoughts on it, where it really starts, is who was your first coach?
My first coach?
Yeah, what's your first... what I'm trying to get to is sort of the first memories of coaching.
My dad.
Yeah?
Yeah, definitely.
In what way?
He taught me how to do all the sports, or literally kayaking. He threw me into everything. I wouldn't say he coached, but he definitely put me in situations and tried to help me and guide me.
So now we can go back to challenging the definition, because is that coaching or throwing you in the situations?
I think both. I think that's coaching, right?
It has to be, right?
Yeah. And he had some skill in whatever he did.
Yeah.
So that
a lot.
Some less, some more. For sure, he knew what he was doing in a lot of ways. And he knew more than me. I was like a 5-year-old kid in a kayak. I had no idea how to paddle it.
Yeah.
And so then he took the reins and said, this is it. And then put you in a completely new situation and guided you through it. So yeah, that's 100% coaching.
So he was your first. Do you still see him as a coach?
No.
Why not?
Because I'm faster than him and they're running the bike. No, he's always going to be up there in terms of guidance, in terms of help me steer through situations, because he's got more experience. He knows me from obviously being a kid, so it's always going to be a coach.
So let's look at some characteristics, mate, that you remember from the early days, whether he was your coach, whether he wasn't your coach? What are your early sort of recollections of a coach?
Being
characteristics-wise.
Characteristics-wise. I had terrible communication, eh? But communication. Instruction.
Your dad had terrible communication.
Me as well. I think if you characteristics of a coach, of him especially, he said less and told me to do more, and that was quite good in terms of exploratory exploration into what my body was capable of.
Yeah.
So, but as a kid, right? So that's somebody who has no experience, has no idea what's going on. So just go in, try that. If that doesn't work, what happens then?
Yeah.
So in terms of, he looked a lot like in terms of what I was doing, and then like stepped in and helped out. So he's a mentor in the fact that he was a strong character. I don't really know, to be honest. Like if I looked at my actual first running coach, Dave Barden from Tyndale Harriers.
What age were you?
I went when I was about like 12, and I'd just come back from St. Helena. So he's the first real memorable coach I had.
Wow.
Yeah, way
Good
back.
memory.
Yeah, fantastic.
To rattle off his name like that, unless it's in your notes, that's solid.
No. One note.
Yeah, one note.
Yeah, Dave Barden, he was a fantastic coach, and his characteristics were he listened to you. He's very good in terms of how he explained everything.
Yeah,
and he was a guiding force in that. He never got too involved. He was just there. He knew when you needed a push, so he's very motivating when you needed like a G up. And he was also very he disciplined when he needed to. He was very much like, no, that's not correct. This is the way you do it. I think it was very black and white what you got with him.
That was because he's at Tyndale Harriers, mate.
The best running club in England athletics. No.
Is it?
It had a couple names.
Yeah, it would be up there.
Yeah, we perform well in cross country and longer distances.
It was quite sort of characteristic for the North and the Northeast to produce good cross country talent rather than the South.
Because it's colder, isn't it?
Do you think that's what it was?
No, I think it's more of a culture.
Yeah.
Cross country is much more of a culture in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Running hard and being tough is reflected in running through mud and doing better over longer, harder distances as opposed to fast, like frivolous 800 meters.
Yeah. Yeah, I always remember at sort of county and English schools and stuff, the northern counties were
decent. Always
solid.
Yeah.
Like it'd probably be a bit harsh to say they were a lot better than the southern counties, but and definitely in cross country, the northern counties were
always top three.
Yeah.
100%.
It's interesting. We digress. Coming back to it, mate, when you were that was your first run coach at 12 years old, how aware of coaching characteristics do you think, like it's probably quite easy now to sit back and reflect on the characteristics that you saw because you've learned so much along the way. But if you try and transport yourself back to that 12-year-old boy, what do you think resonated with you and motivated you to sort of, if we dive back to those definitions, to help you improve performance?
I think belief. He was, belief. So the running's fine, right? Because you're enthusiastic to run. Sometimes less so. You're a bit like, I can't be bothered tonight. Can't be bothered to get a 35-minute train to Hexham. But then once you get there, it's fine because you're there. You're with your run club and your people who you train with. And then his motivation to keep you on track in terms of giving you progress reports was really good. And then when you went into a race, he always had your back and he always made you feel like positive about going into it.
In what way?
Just the way he'd speak at the end of reps, end of sets. It's like, that's really good. And then at the end of the session, because we've got like 10 kids there, all wanting to be as fast as they possibly can be, right? Some not so, but definitely at least 6 of those people wanted to be really quick.
Yeah.
And he'd just take you to the side and say, how are you feeling about the weekend? What are you going to try and do? And then he'd give you some utterance about what you should be looking to do, but not too strong, because we're kids, right? We're not that much into times. We're not that into. We just want to beat who's in front of us. We just want to kick. We just want to hurt ourselves and win. And that's him trying to control that and getting more of an idea, a bit more consciousness about what we're actually doing within that race. I think it just drip feed, especially with little idiots like me.
It's interesting though what you said there, mate, because when you're young, you're quite innocent to it all. You just want to beat the guy in front, or once you've got the respect of the coach, or you respect the coach, all you're looking for is literally for him to say, well done.
Yeah.
Like that sort of encouragement, like at the end of or halfway through a session, to pull you to one side and just say you're doing all right.
Yeah, literally. That's it. Just like, that's what I want you to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, cool, thanks.
Is that the same these days?
I think people are more informed about what a coach is, or what a coach should be, or what they perceive a coach to be, even at 12. Like, I had no information apart from my GCSEs. Not GCSEs, that was way ahead
of the game,
was it PE?
Yeah.
And the teachers at school, right? And then there was nobody at school necessarily in the PE department that I looked up to or was good enough for me to respect them. But I think these days people are wanting more and more in terms of gratification or congratulations on their efforts to keep them motivated, because inherently maybe that drive isn't strong enough to be driven by itself, which is interesting. But I don't know about like young'uns. I used to coach. I went back to Tyne Harriers when I was 21, and was it 21? Yeah, and I became like a junior coach there for a year and a half, I think. Right. And I used to go there every Thursday and Tuesday and coach a group of 10-year-olds or something. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, it was such a learning experience, because I read somewhere recently, if you can coach like a 10-year-old who doesn't care or doesn't know, then you can coach anybody, which is quite cool. And I think I quite like that sentiment. But they had phones by then. They had more of an idea about what we were training and why we were training it. But it's still the same. It's how you impart that knowledge. In our game, in coaching adults, it's totally different, because there's a level of expected intelligence and knowledge, which sometimes actually a kid might know more than somebody coming into the sport for the first time. So they expect.
I mean, let's go back to the definition and ChatGPT, right? You can take a program that perhaps you've explained as a coach or you've written, and you could pull it out through the software that we use through Training Peaks, and you could ask Google or now ask ChatGPT, is this the right way? Yeah,
exactly right.
And it would have its own opinion.
And that's why I think it's good in some respects, because there's a lot of computers and technologies out there now that are trying to do that, right? So
yes.
you do that. You can go and say, I'm this much, I train this much on average. It grabs all your data from Strava. It'll tell you average pace, your average everything, and your typical trends. And then it'll create your optimal, like, personalized program. And I think that's even better for us, because we, as a coach, we then have to step up and make sure that our methods are excellent. Because I think to look at a Training Peaks account and your weekly schedule as your coach is incorrect. I think the value goes far beyond that.
You said something a few minutes ago, mate, which I want to go back to, and I want to put into the bucket of intrinsic versus extrinsic sort of motivation. In the days where you started running, the only real external motivation you got was from beating other kids, or a well done from a coach or your parents. A lot of it was driven internally. You said something that made me think that you believe that now a lot of motivation is actually coming externally, or a lot more than it was before. What are your thoughts there?
Just awareness of your training, right? So you go into it and you get this hit when you do your first run, for example, your first 5K, you do couch the 5K, you get your 5K. Yeah. And everybody around your social circle who's been seeing you post on Instagram, or your Strava is going up, and it's people are seeing your progress, and every time you get a kudos, like a little dose of well done.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same when people see you, oh, you're looking great, oh, you're looking great, you're running great, and you get this like sort of feedback that is like, you're doing fantastic. This is now starting to be what defines you, is progress continually. Yeah. And you have to keep doing it in order to keep getting that kudos, right?
That's what I'm writing right now.
And then and then that kudos becomes what's driving you to get up in the morning. Where if you lose sight of that, what you're actually getting up for, which was the initial aim, which wasn't to get 1,000 likes on Strava or on Instagram,
exactly.
right? It's to get up and make yourself better.
Yeah.
So I think it's changed a little, just because the awareness and the ways in which we can broadcast our activities is changing a lot.
I mean, it's super interesting, right? And you've got to Strava less than 15 minutes in, which I hope you'd get there at some stage. I didn't think it'd be quite that quick. But
whap it in there.
Like, that's the thing. What these apps have done well, and Training Peaks have stayed away from it, although recently have, there's smiley faces in there. You can rate your score.
Yeah.
You can rate your workout. But what they've tapped into is kind of where you started with that coach, that what you were looking for is a well done.
Yeah.
Strava now, you can post your results so everyone can give you kudos. Yeah. But it somehow, it changes the trajectory of motivation and why we're actually doing what we're doing.
And it changes behaviors, right? Not just but it'll dictate how much you train.
Yeah.
It'll be your accountability session, but also your potential overtraining. If someone doesn't see that you've done 150K that weekend, they start questioning, what's wrong?
Yeah.
And then you get the what's wrong message. Are you sure you're okay? If it's a slow run.
Yeah.
And it's mental to think like that. But then there's so much way to broadcast that within Strava. There's now those little funny virtual map routes. So there's different ways in which to highlight how great you've been. So you can go on, you can just like put your workout, which is no name, doesn't have any details. Nobody has any idea what you've done.
Right.
Or you can rename it, and then you can put a description of it. You can add photos to it, and you can put a virtual tour. So it then it takes in this whole different meaning of that run. So then on the run, you've got a pressure to make sure that's the best run you've done. You've got a pressure to make sure your little chart looks amazing.
Yeah.
So you can post and say, that's how you do it. Which I don't necessarily disagree with. I think you have, it can be used in a positive and a negative way, but it's very interesting that they've given so many different ways to say, look how good I did.
And what that leads us to, mate, is the potential redundancy of human coaching.
Potential. I
use that word on purpose.
Yeah. It's
where does that point come if we're moving to where we started, ChatGPT, if we're moving to these functions in apps like Strava, and Strava's pretty big, especially in endurance sports.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I think the days where people are tracking training through other social media is probably less. It's weird because it's become a lot less, whereas I think 10 years ago people were more, maybe this is because of public judgment, but they're a lot happier to put it through sort of standard forms such as Facebook and Instagram, whereas now you see it less.
Yeah.
They'll talk about it, but not quite as specific. There's still some people with their marathon PB in their bio, and that's cool, So where does it take over? Have you got yours in there? No, just your 10K time.
Don't think I have, I actually think it's what you asked me about my first coach, old Dave, and it was what had defined him, and it's respect and trust, and also like just overall respect for that person and their approval and their nod being a thing you trust and something that you can put stock in.
Yeah.
Like, do you respect and trust 150 people giving you kudos on Strava? Do you? Hell, you don't. You don't care. I
mean, if you do, mate, you're in a really bad situation, in my opinion.
Got a lot of bandwidth.
But you're in a bad situation.
Yeah.
Like if that's, and that might talk to a lot of people that listen or a lot of people that listen that may have been there.
Yeah.
That the number of thumbs up kudos that you get on your Strava is like number one reason I speak to people. Why don't you post more to your Instagram? I feel bad, no one will like it. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
It's super interesting, isn't it? Sorry, carry on.
No, I think that's it though, isn't it? It's who do you like? That goes back to another thing. Like you have 5 people within your life that you really trust and put respect in and will take as gospel, not gospel, but a good sounding board. Like we've talked about many a time, and that coach. And I don't think you could ever replace that guidance, which is a skilled hand. You have to be good at what you do. But if you're good at what you do, then you earn respect and trust. And then you're able to have a nuance, like read into a situation further than, say, a computer would do, or a single like or thumbs up on Instagram or whatever social media channel. Like it's the coach's job is, and has always been in different forms, about gaining trust and respect.
Yes. And
maintaining it through good practice.
So will there come a point, or has there come a point where people, will there come a point where people ignore that and go, like, there's a lot of people there that, and endurance sports is quite an easy sort of target because there's a lot of people playing endurance sports, let's say. There's a lot of people that are moving to more of a self-coach model because they think that the data that they've got, the various tracking, whether it's an absolutely ridiculous waste of money Whoop app that tells you absolute nonsense, and they base their recovery on that rather than how they feel, or, you know, I'm doing good because of all that kudos in Strava. There's a lot of people that are heading in that direction or already in that direction.
Yeah, there is, but there always will be, because there's that they don't understand it or they haven't had a good coach to show them the way properly. If they've had an opportunity to be coached and it hasn't been a successful one, then they have this negative connotation with that process. That coach just gave me a plan, didn't speak to me, didn't make sure it was all right, didn't take into my family account, didn't like plan for my holidays, didn't like check in with me once a week, didn't give me feedback once a week, yada, 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 all the things that we do. And then they're tarnished. They've got this idea that coaching is simply somebody dragging and dropping 4-week plan into your training peaks, which is absolutely incorrect. Actually, half of that like is dropping and dragging is putting a plan in is a very, very important, and it's the base of all your training. But it's actually, for a coach, it's not the hardest thing to do to get somebody into a marathon shape. We know how to do it. We know the recipe. But the fun is creating a recipe that works for that person and making sure that they're happy and feel empowered, have the nutrition plan, all that stuff behind it, which a computer can do, but we're human beings. We need, and we want, and we do best with personal contact and face to face, and like having somebody who you think at the end of the race, I'm going to tell them straight away. I'm going to send them a picture and no one else and say, look how well I did. And that's the approval they're wanting because they've trusted and you've been through something together. It's cool. I'm not saying like, sorry.
No, mate.
I think there is and will continue to be more AI input into training plans. I think in high performance, it'll start where one coach has, say a national government body has funding for one coach. And he's got 5 programs or 6 programs to look after. And they all include massive amounts of detailed driving and massive amounts of like data, like, well, filtration, right? To figure out what's going on where and to track trends over not 6 months, but 6 years. To track trajectory and possible like ways in which that person can improve. So I think that's a really good way of using it, and that will trickle down into, say, me and you. Well, you coach ultra yard back people, backyard ultra
backward people,
who break some sort of record going backwards. But yeah, you'll look at that, and then you'll see that the high performance are doing it, and it always happens like this. Technology starts at the top and then trickles down, and then you go, okay, so this program I've got can generate a generic program for a marathon. This has learnt my behaviors as a coach. It has said, this is how you like to program, this is what you take into account, this is what we think would work for your person. And then you can go as like an overseer. Say you've got 100 athletes, which some people do, right? And then that person goes, okay,
not me.
No, absolutely not. We keep our person. I don't know how you want to chat to 100 people at once and it's every day,
in
right?
a year.
So you take that, and then that person will go, okay, that's a good program,
Yeah.
but let's tweak that and that because that doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
For insight, but that you have to have insight. Therefore, you have to have a connection. So they both drive each other, right?
Yeah, mate, you know, I'm quite old school in a lot of this, and I absolutely believe and can never see it in my lifetime changing the role of a coach because of the things that you've said so far.
Yeah, agreed.
However, when I look at it in some isolation, and we can play out a really simple scenario here that you've put together a great training program, and which could have been downloaded. So that's there, and it's not going well for the athlete. So they're a remote athlete in a different country that, yes, you might have a call with once a month or once a week or once every 2 months in some scenarios, depending on how it plays out. So their next port of call to you is a message, normally either through Training Peaks or through WhatsApp. I wonder when we get to the point where they can type that same message into something like ChatGPT, and it will get, because it's already learned how you would react to that, and it gives you that. And not only, like, the technology will be there, course, for sure. Yeah. It's probably already there, to be honest. But as an athlete, I don't know, maybe this is a good question. As an athlete yourself, how would you feel about the fact that it's a lot of knowledge, and it's probably based on real, so what the actual answer is, but you also know that it's not a real person that you're talking to?
It's still like, so if I then went to meet that person on Zoom, my weekly call, and they hadn't checked through the plethora of WhatsApp messages I'd sent, then you'd know automatically that there would be no conversation had. Yeah. So then it's completely irrelevant. Yeah. Yes, it can mimic what you do. Yeah. But if you have to talk to your coach. Yeah. Otherwise, in a face-to-face way. Otherwise, you'd get nowhere. You don't get nowhere, but you're very limited in what you can actually achieve in terms of a journey together.
But ChatGPT knows exactly what you as a coach is going to say.
Yeah, of course they do. But then when you come to meet them, if I as a coach have not read through 200 reams of WhatsApp messages, because if it replies straight away, you're going to reply straight away. And it's going to keep going like that. So you're going to have this massive in-depth conversation. Yeah. So unless ChatGPT is going to condense that down into a 30-second audio clip for you to listen to, which it might do, which is still a lot of bandwidth to be taking in at 2 times speed. Yeah. It's still going to not feel authentic. Yeah. And people can tell, right?
Absolutely.
Until they can't.
I mean, mate, as I say, and it's not just to protect my job. I just think it's a no-brainer. But then it comes to the question, and this might explain it a little bit better to people that think maybe we're a bit confused, which we obviously are.
Naturally.
How much of your time as a coach do you think you spend using your technical knowledge of training programs versus, I think, what we've definitely vastly improved or increased the amount of tools that we have on more the emotional side in the last 2 or 3 years, because of everyone knows sort of why. But when you look at your coaching, mate, what is the split?
Was it, you said the other day, actually, 80-20. 20% technical, 80%.
20% technical.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a bit more than that. I would like to think it's a bit more than that. But yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Because, a session's a session. Easy in strides is easy in strides. Yeah. An easy 2-hour aerobic ride is an easy 2-hour aerobic ride. You can give feedback. You've got your points that you pick out and you can track the measurement, and the progress. But really, it's making sure that the person I look after, my athlete, is happy. Yeah. And contented with, number one, the training, but also how that fits into everything.
There's a bit in the book that we've both read, Jonathan Vorter's One Way Ticket, that it sort of plays into this quite well, where it says, dangerous, of course, but what part of cycling isn't dangerous. It's a sport that mimics the realities of life. More can go wrong than right, and no one is going to protect you from that.
Solid, yeah?
Yeah, and I mean, that needs human connection and action more than anything else. Like, I mean, the crash that we saw yesterday as well. How do those guys get up today? They crashed at 60 k's an hour.
Hop back up.
And maybe one of them will pull out because they've got a broken pelvis, but the rest of them will have a lot of road rash, and maybe, I don't think they continue too often these days with broken bones, but it's not unusual.
No.
It's
very usual.
So how do you speak to those people this morning to make them ready to get back on the bike at lunchtime, knowing that it's day 3 of a 3-week Grand Tour?
Yeah, see if ChatGPT can come up with something for that, right?
Come on, ChatGPT, give
come on,
us
son,
your best
come
shot.
on. Can you keep it going? Can you keep that guy on a bike?
What do you say in that scenario, mate? You're the man behind the bus wheel.
What? Just crack on. No, come on. It depends on the person, right? If it's a highly, like a really emotional person who's new to cycling, you don't say crack on. You say, you ease them back up, and you speak to somebody on a different level. If it's somebody who's crashed many times, you say, the crack, get on. It's your job. A pro, come on. It's his job to get back on the bike. In their mind, anyway.
Yeah.
In actual reality, it's definitely not their job to get back on the bike. It's brutal, but again, you can't say there's one way to get somebody back on the bike after a crash. That's the whole point you're coming to, is the fact that it's completely different.
Yeah.
For any different one person, is about a million different ways you can say something, and only probably 5 of those are right.
Let's come then. We've spoken a bit about coaching and coaching qualities. I always think for a good coach to be successful, the athlete client that they're coaching also needs to be what we often refer to as coachable. What are you looking for, mate, when you are either looking for someone to coach or you're looking at someone that you coach? What are some of the most important traits under that sort of banner of being coachable?
This is
bearing in mind that 0 of your clients listen to this show.
They have to, it's quite simple, actually, and it's changed a lot for me over the last 3 years since being an InnerFight endurance coach. I got caught up in coaching certain types of athletes, like standard and caliber, and also like learning and seeing an opportunity to learn. But actually, what it comes to is that I want to be able to coach anyone.
Right.
It's in my coaching mission statement, call it. And they need to be able to, well, firstly listen, learn, and be honest, and also do a lot of hard work if needs be, but mainly that one. So if you have it works across the board. If you've got a brand new beginner, they'll only get better if they listen and they're honest about what's going on. If they're not happy with something, they need to be able to say it. If they don't listen and just do what they think, then they'll never learn. And then that's the same with a high performing athlete. So if you get somebody who's prepping to go to the Olympics, you've actually got a harder job, because they're less likely to listen or learn, because they've been in that situation for years, and their way is usually the way they go. However, it's all about how you get through to that and their openness. If I meet somebody and I have to meet them for the first time and chat to them and just hear their story and hear where they're coming from, and then I'll say a couple of things and see what they respond to with that, and quite plainly say, this requires communication, it requires honesty, and you have to be willing to learn and change your behaviors. And if somebody is willing to do that, then I am all in. Absolutely nothing's going to stop me from trying my absolute damnedest to get you where you want to go.
The third quality that you're looking for seems quite straightforward, but sometimes I've found sometimes it's lacking, especially when people, and it surprises me when people are paying for a service to get better, that honesty isn't as freely available as maybe it should be.
It's because there's barriers put up to protect their ego or their self-worth.
It's the first time we've said ego in 40 minutes, mate.
Go on then. Get it in there.
Amazing.
But yeah, honesty comes down to, there's lots of different types of honesty, right? There's honesty about a workout and how it went. There's honesty about why they didn't do the session. There's honesty about their sleep habits. There's honesty about their nutrition. And it's all built to protect this ego thing that sort of surrounds that avoidance to be honest is to protect themselves from accepting the truth. So you do a 4:30 per K run for an hour. You say it feels great and feels easy. Your heart rate's telling me something completely different, right? And the face you make after it is totally different as well.
And so, the social media post you make is totally different.
About being like super easy. It's not easy. Like just admit it. But you won't. Because it's damaging how fast you think you are or you should be. Yeah. And then that's also to please the ego that you project. And the egos around you that will question what's going on. And it all becomes a big battle off. So that honesty is I think it's the number, like it's top 3, right? It's so important because otherwise you can't progress, because then you're working on falsities and you're working on mistruths.
How long does it take you to figure out people's honesty and integrity?
Depends on the person.
Why are you laughing at me?
It's just open-ended. I honestly can't say. It depends on that first meeting. Depends on how often you see the person and how much you interact with them, and then how vulnerable a situation you can put that person in to be, where there is no way to be dishonest. Like if you call somebody out on it and they plain reject it, not in the first week, however.
Really?
Well, it depends.
What do you do to try and get to that route as fast as you can, mate? You must have some.
Just present evidence back to them. Just like ask them how it was, and then say, why is your heart rate in zone 20? There's only 5 of them anyway. You're stuck in it. Like, so how did it feel? Yeah. And then just keep asking them questions, and then get more and more answers. And then I'm like a little chat GPT. I start to collate those responses and then formulate my own idea of what is actually going on. And then you can start to like parrot back to them what they're saying to you.
Do you sometimes find that it's hard to put all of that subjective data in some kind of order in your own mind? How do you manage that?
More and more reflections and making notes about like training sessions that people have done well and have done not so well, and what happened, and then make a note of it for next time. So going into it, you're more aware of previous. Yeah. So you take your subjective initial assessment, and then you see what happens in other sessions, and then you see what happens, say, in 4 weeks' time with exactly the same session. So subjectivity gets a reference point.
We've all had, I think we can remember, and you rattled off your dad to start, and then your first coach there at 12 years old, good coaches. What about some not so good experiences with coaches?
I haven't had that many coaches, really. There's a coach that took over from Dave who wasn't so good. He was too angry. He was too emotional. He couldn't control his own emotions, and then he couldn't, therefore, be a good coach.
Talk to us a little bit about that, mate. We haven't talked too much about anger and calm and emotions. So he just lost it too much. About session not being done properly. If you weren't hitting the times, you were going faster or slower for the lap times. People management was shocking. He was a really nice person, but as soon as he put on his little coaching hat, he changed. He couldn't sort of get people to do what he wanted, or runners to run at certain paces, especially not me, because it's, as people might know, it's quite hard. But when it did go wrong, so when we weren't hitting sessions or whatever, it too personal, too emotional, too angry,
And it was almost, it wasn't even directed at you, it was directed at himself, but it came out through that. So that was a really good experience to see how somebody who's a perfectly nice person and is intelligent, knows what they're doing, can get it wrong. And you put that in a professional like Shane Sutton, he loved to shout at people and you'd get the best results, and you'd also get called out for being a misogynistic, sexist prick. However, he got results in a professional setup in the old hat. He'd get the best because he knew how to play people. Yeah. But this guy didn't. It was just anger.
I think we have seen a lot of that, right? People move to coaching for maybe not the right reasons. Maybe we always used to say it with referees in rugby that they were refs because they were just shit players.
Yeah.
And that would definitely put me in line for a yellow card quite quickly. But I think it's equal in coaching for a lot of people. The reason why they move into being a coach is they probably don't really know.
Yeah, they just sort of fall into it. They don't follow a passion because it's something they do and thinks would be quite cool, but don't quite get it. And then all the bad traits that they took from the old job sort of fall into a coaching job, which is a totally different area. There's no job quite like it. Whether you're a coach in sport, whether you're a coach in any form, it's totally different to any
unique
corporate, hospitality, whatever. It's so unique, and
we know a large amount of super successful athletes, from Jordan, Ronaldo, Federer. We always think that all these top athletes have also had some incredible coaches to get them there. But obviously those coaches are far less celebrated. And to be honest, mate, as I was putting this show together, I was thinking about when I came to that point, I was like, what coaches do I really enjoy? Do I really respect? And it's a lot easier because we've got exposure through the media to all the top athletes, and they're the ones that get all the glory. We get more exposure to them than we do to coaches. But are there some coaches that you've followed for a long time that you've enjoyed? Don't say Ken Boy.
Oh yeah, bugger. Two really good run coaches, Renato Canova, the Italian stallion, who coaches amazing long distance athletes, predominantly in Kenya. And the reason I do, because he's never scared to try new things or push the boundaries. And there's lots of reasoning about why he does sessions like he does and his methodology, but he doesn't speak about it a lot. He just cracks on with it. And if you ask him, he'll tell you.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously Jack Daniels, who's also a very good, he is trendsetter running coach, and he brings in, I respect him, I think, because of his use of science in a very applicable way. It's very cool.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because we always look to the top athletes to see in that snapshot what they're doing, but we very rarely go back one layer and look at the coaches and what protocols they've used on various athletes over long periods of time. Both those guys that you mentioned are like close to 100 years old.
At least.
Well, they look it anyway,
least.
don't
101, they? Jack Daniels for sure. Then there's, what's his name? Old mate from triathlon. No.
Brett Sutton?
No.
You like him?
Plu. Forgotten. Anyway, we digress. But Friel, he's not bad. He's written a couple of books. We all look at them. We all read them. But there's a couple who just talk very measured, and their methods are absolutely class. And they sort of preach the same thing that I respect, which is consistency, like decent scientific background, and just crack on with it.
Fast forward 5 years to wrap it up, mate, where we've spoken a lot about the impact of tech, whilst we've also understood that human connection, communication, and honesty is integral to coaching, and tech will not take it over. But do you ever think forward, where you're coaching, where you will be as a coach?
I don't think I think about where. I think about what I am as a coach and how within that time frame I'll develop. I want to be better. Like every day, every year.
What does that look like though?
Just keep asking questions. Keep being inquisitive of why you're doing what you're doing. Don't just settle for that's the way it's always been done, because that's the death of all coaching. That's rubbish coaching. Whereas if you look at what could be done differently, or why am I doing it, and question it, and then go and seek answers, then you will inevitably get better. Also expose yourself, and I want to expose myself to different athletes, different backgrounds, different skill sets, maybe even different sport for a bit of a laugh. Like try something else, like get a completely different perspective of coaching.
What sport, if you could choose any sport to coach, what would it be?
Badminton.
Really? Why?
It's it's brutal. It's a fine line sport, fine motor sport. The margins are tiny, right? It's like any highly skilled, like snooker, for example.
Yeah.
Call it a sport. Yeah, it's go on then. But if you look at what they have to do, like darts as well, I mean, half cut half the time. I was going to say,
darts would be your next one.
It's such a fine margin of error.
Yes.
Like the difference between winning and losing is literally a flick of the wrist in the wrong direction, or it's a twitch in your muscle.
Yeah.
So how does that get coached, and how are the differences there, and what is applicable from that into other sports? I think it's just totally different, isn't it? Gets you right out of that little endurance zone.
Do you never think about sports that you played as a kid that you now have all these coaching tools and this knowledge that you could go back to and you would do differently?
Yachting.
Yachting's a sport that you played as a kid on the Tyne.
Kayak, innit? Kayak. That'd be quite fun. See how different coaching kayaking is to endurance sport. I used to do a lot of that. It used to be quite fun.
Did you never think, with what you know now, to take it back into something that you used to do, you could make a huge difference?
Yeah.
You could?
Yeah.
Kayaking?
Yeah, 80-20 in it. I think so.
It'd be interesting.
It'd be a great learning experience, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just for a week, go for like a sport. You used to go on the sports tours as kids in summer.
Yeah.
When you didn't go to the Algarve or something.
Yeah.
You could do that and go and teach all the sports for a week and see what you learn.
Like a sports camp.
Yeah. Everything.
I remember teaching in sports camps.
Did you teach that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sports camps, all the kids through university. Yeah. You have to. And every different sport.
Everyone.
Yeah, because, the sacks, go and entertain these 10 kids for an hour with 3, bean sacks, whatever they are.
Oh, yeah. Crack on.
It teaches you. It teaches you, mate. That's why I often think about that, and I'm like, I wonder what coaching that would look like now, or what being in that sport, like the things that obviously we talk about and we've talked about on the show, like how it would be different if I took that back to rugby.
Yeah.
And that's what Clarkie's doing.
Yeah.
And that's why he's seen as, call it cutting edge, call it different, or call it a great coach within rugby here, because he's just looking at what's going on around here and he's taking it into an environment that it's new to. It's just asking, and it's what you said, it's just asking different questions. Like, why are we doing it like that?
That's why Sky, when they initially came to the fore, they had a swim coach come in, and he then was the director of performance for like 3 years or 4 years, because Tim Kerrison. He brought in just new eyes.
Yeah.
Said, why aren't you warming up? Why aren't you cooling down?
Yeah.
Because never do it before.
Yeah.
So interesting, right? Just I used to coach. I used to take like 4 little kids twice or 3 times a week when I lived in Saudi for a brief spell. We used to have a play pen, and it was trying to teach them fine motor skills and like gross motor skills to get them to develop as kids. Like they're like 4 or 5 years old.
Amazing.
Just imagine going back to that situation.
See?
Next level.
Now I've got you thinking. Well, mate, when you've had a career change and you're out of endurance sports and back into something else, we'll have another conversation about coaching.
Top tennis pro.
Actually, just remembered, we did a show in Iten in November.
We did.
That was the first time I think we spoke one-to-one on the show.
Better
Folks, if you like what this gentleman said, call him or mail him, rf@innerfight.com. All things coaching, all things honesty. He will listen, he will learn, and he'll hopefully teach you something, mate. That was a very interesting 45 minutes, so I appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone that listened will also appreciate it. Thank you very much. Cheers.